About 9 months ago, I set out to document our family history. I wanted to capture the memories before they faded and dig into the official records to separate the myths from the facts. What I found was a story of survival, of grit, of flying doghouses and stolen dimes, and of a man who crossed an ocean to leave his name behind. I'm so excited to announce that I've turned our family story into an audiobook, and I want to share it with all of you. Over the coming months, we are going to travel from the soot-stained cobblestones of Dublin to the trenches of the First World War. We'll ride along for the great Autoclave heist. We'll survive the Battle of the Thames Valley, and we'll remember the incredible men and women who built the branches of this family tree: Kathleen, Eileen, Jake, Tom, and Bob. Before he was a salesman, a husband, or a father, he was Flying Officer John Edward Carroll. To his family in Ontario, he was John. To his father, a man who knew the mud and misery of the Great War, he was the son who received a piece of advice born from a scarred memory. Don't fight on the ground, John. Fight in the air. In the close-knit life and death fraternity of the Royal Canadian Air Force, he answered to Jack, but mostly to Jake, a name forged in the heat, dust, and vast unforgiving skies of the North African desert. As his brother Bob recalled, Jake went over to England early in the war, eventually joining the legendary Royal Air Force for their Mediterranean campaign. He was one of 12 pilots in his group assigned to this theater of war. Only 2 would make it home. Their mission was brutally simple and incredibly dangerous: sever German supply lines. The days began at 4 a.m, taking off in the pre-dawn darkness in their Bristol Beaufighters. They flew perilously low, skimming just 50 feet above the waves of the Mediterranean to stay under enemy radar. Sometimes the crests of the waves would slap against the fuselage, a rhythmic, terrifying drumbeat against the metal, as the sun rose behind them. It cast the German supply ships into silhouette, and they would fly directly towards the light to line up their attack. This was a war of improvisation. The Beaufighters, nicknamed Whispering Death, arrived from the factories smelling of fresh paint, but with no instruction manuals. The pilots, most barely out of their teens, learned by a simple, terrifying rule: don't touch any red buttons. They mastered the machines by trial and error, sharing notes in the mess hall after flights. The new car smell quickly vanished, baked out by the desert sun, and contrary to the Hollywood image of the magnificent flying machines, reality stepped in with the unavoidable stench of sweat and urine, inevitably pooling in the belly of the unpressurized, untoileted planes. Radios and the revolutionary radar were unreliable, their tubes often beaten into silence by engine vibration. It was a raw, visceral existence governed by instinct and courage. There was a gallows humor to it all. Some crews, eager for a few extra beers at the officers' mess, would occasionally drop the fish, their expensive torpedo, into the empty sea and return to base. The limeys, as Jake called them, caught on and installed cameras that snapped a picture at the moment of release. An empty frame with no ship in sight meant serious trouble, and there was the sheer reckless youth of it. Jake told the story of flying his crew to Cairo for a night of fun, only to have everyone fall asleep on autopilot for the return trip, waking with a jolt deep over enemy lines. They made it back by sheer luck, a chilling reminder of how thin the line was between adventure and oblivion. But this blend of routine and recklessness was a thin veil over constant mortal danger. On the morning of July 2nd, 1943, that veil was torn away. Jake and his gunner were on a standard mission. They lined up their target, a German gunboat, and he released the torpedo. As he banked the Beaufighter up and over the ship, the anti-aircraft guns opened up. A shell ripped into one of the 2 engines, knocking it out completely. With only one engine, Jake knew his range was cut to just 50 miles. The Egyptian coast was 200 miles away. He had no choice. He brought the plane down on the open sea. In the cockpit behind him, his observer and gunner sat as their training kicked in. The sea began to claim the aircraft. They pulled the cord for the main inflatable dinghy. Nothing. The plug failed as the water rose. They found the auxiliary dinghy, a tiny raft designed for a single person. They pulled the plug. It worked. Both men scrambled into the hopelessly small raft just as their plane disappeared beneath the waves. They were alone adrift in a one-man dinghy with no food, water, or supplies. A storm was brewing. In the distance, they could see the enemy-occupied island of Crete. To be blown ashore there meant capture. For 2 days, they were battered by wind and rain, growing weaker. Their only salvation was a small, 2-foot square red waterproof flag, which they fashioned into a crude bag to catch a few precious sips of rainwater. On the 3rd day, a British Walrus flying boat, a clumsy but effective rescue aircraft, spotted them. It landed on the choppy seas, and the 2 exhausted airmen were pulled aboard. Their ordeal should have been over, but the storm had grown too severe for the Walrus to take off. The pilot radioed their position, confirming the rescue, but reporting they were now trapped on the water. The crew deployed their own larger dinghy as a precaution. 20 minutes later, the rescue plane itself was overturned by a wave and sank. Now there were 5 men in a dinghy. Fortunately, the Mayday call had been received. A motor torpedo boat was dispatched at high speed, arriving 2 hours later to pull the exhausted crew from the sea. When the war in North Africa was finally over, only 3 aircraft from Jake's original group of 12 were left to fly back to England. The final leg of the journey would deliver the cruelest blow. After refueling at Gibraltar, Jake took off. His buddy was right behind him. He looked back just in time to see the 3rd plane take off, fail to gain altitude, and fly directly into the Rock of Gibraltar. The crew that had survived the entire campaign was lost in an instant, and so only 2 got back. Jake lost nearly all his buddies and friends from those years. It was a weight he would carry for the rest of his life, a silent story that explained the quiet comfort he later found in the easy camaraderie of a Legion Hall, a world away from the noise of the engines and the ghosts of the Mediterranean sky. The image shows a survivor's proof, Jake Carroll's Royal Air Force ID card, and his exclusive Goldfish Club membership card. The Goldfish Club was an unofficial but highly respected club for airmen who had escaped death by using their emergency dinghy after being shot down over water. The card, officially dated July 2, 1943, stands as the definitive proof of the story that became a cornerstone of his life. The war changed him in other, quieter ways, embedding instincts so deep they became unconscious reflexes. Decades later, in the peace of a suburban backyard, his son Tim would watch him light a cigarette. As the match flared, Jake's hands would automatically come up to shield the flame, his fingers forming a tight cup around it before he brought it to his cigarette. It was a gesture he would never lose, the ingrained, life-saving habit of a man who knew that a single careless flicker of light in the darkness could mean death. It was a ghost of the war, a muscle memory of survival played out in a world that was finally safe. The return to civilian life for John Jake Carroll was a jarring transition between 2 realities. The deafening roar of the Bristol Beaufighter's twin engines was replaced by the optimistic hum of post-war London, Ontario, a city shedding its wartime austerity like a heavy coat and eagerly embracing the promise of peace and prosperity. The stark life-or-death calculus of a torpedo run over the Mediterranean gave way to a new, more hopeful mission, building a life from the ground up. For a man who had spent years in the disciplined, hierarchical world of the military, the freedom of civilian life was a vast frontier. He found his footing in the burgeoning world of sales, securing a position at the bustling Firestone Tire Company on Richmond Street. It was a role he was born for. The same calm confidence that had served him well in the cockpit translated into an easy, magnetic charisma on the sales floor. In an era when a veteran's service record was a powerful testament to character and reliability, Jake found that doors opened easily, but it was his own jovial, life-loving nature that closed the deals. He wasn't just a salesman, he was a connector of people, a man who could build instant rapport and he quickly became exceptionally good at his job. He consistently earned an above-average income, a testament to his natural talent and the relentless work ethic forged in the unforgiving skies over North Africa. He was a man who understood that after surviving a war, the challenges of a sales quota were problems that could be solved with a smile and a firm handshake. It was within the walls of Firestone, amidst the scent of new rubber and the clatter of office typewriters, that Jake's life would be forever changed. There he met Gertrude Trudy Harrison, a woman whose professional capabilities were as formidable as her spirit was grounded. Trudy was a compelling blend of two quintessential Canadian worlds. She was a farmer's daughter from the quiet rural community near Zenda, imbued with the practical, no-nonsense strength of the land. But she was also a polished and ambitious professional, a proud graduate of the prestigious Westervelt College. In the mid-20th century, a Westervelt diploma was a mark of distinction, a signal that its holder was among the most skilled and efficient administrative professionals in the region. Trudy was no exception. Her skills were remarkable. She could scribble shorthand with a speed that could capture the fastest talker and transcribe from a dictaphone with a blur of focused efficiency. She was the intelligent, highly capable engine that made the business world run, the perfect partner for the charismatic young pilot looking to make his mark. Their courtship blossomed in the hopeful atmosphere of the late 1940s, and they soon married, beginning their life together in a modest, rented home at 277 Piccadilly Street. It was a practical starting point, a short distance from the Firestone offices, and the perfect nest for a young couple building a future. It was here they began their family with the arrival of their son Tim and later a daughter Pat. As Jake's career continued to flourish, their success allowed them to move to a larger home on Byron Avenue in nearby Byron, joining the wave of young families creating new lives in the burgeoning suburbs. This upward trajectory, a classic story of post-war prosperity, soon culminated in the ultimate symbol of the 1950s dream, a brand new custom-built ranch-style house at 387 Colville Boulevard. This home was not just a purchase, it was a project, and a testament to Trudy's incredible, multifaceted capabilities. While Jake was the provider, Trudy became the builder. With the architectural plans in hand, she took on the role of project manager, personally overseeing the construction. She formed a working partnership with an older local carpenter named Claude, a man with a distinct British accent who lived just around the corner. Day after day, she was on the construction site, translating her sharp administrative mind into the practical language of lumber, timelines, and subcontractors. She was ensuring that the foundation of their family's future was being built not just with wood and nails, but with her own intelligence and unwavering attention to detail. The finished home, with its modern layout and sprawling suburban lot, was more than just a house. It was a physical manifestation of their perfect partnership, a tangible result of Jake's skill in the sales world and Trudy's sharp, can-do spirit. It was a place of security, comfort, and immense pride, a solid runway from which Jake, ever the ambitious pilot, would soon launch the family into their next and most daring chapter. Tim remembers a Carroll family picnic. The carport provided a rain cover for a buffet of summertime delights like ham, potato salad, and apple and rhubarb pies. The beautiful ranch-style house, a home Trudy had literally helped build, should have been a symbol of arrival, a place to put down deep roots for many. It would have been the pinnacle of post-war ambition, but for Jake Carroll, who had spent his youth scanning distant horizons from a pilot's seat, stability felt like standing still. His jovial nature and success in sales were undeniable, but beneath them lay the restless heart of a risk-taker. The security of a sales job, no matter how lucrative, could not compete with the siren song of being his own boss again. An opportunity arose in the north, a whisper of a boom that promised vast rewards for those bold enough to seize it. And so, just a couple of years after completing their dream home, the Carrolls prepared to take their biggest gamble yet. The year was 1954. The epicenter of this new gold rush was not a gold field, but the rugged Canadian Shield country around Elliot Lake, where a massive deposit of uranium had been discovered. The world was entering the atomic age, and the demand for uranium was exploding. To get the ore out of the ground required an army of men and a fleet of heavy machinery. It was a market hungry for tough, reliable trucks, and Jake saw his opening. He formed a partnership with a man named Davies from Sault Ste. Marie, and together they secured a dealership for the legendary White Motor Company. Their plan to move to North Bay, the gateway to the north, and supply the burgeoning mining industry. It was a complete uprooting. Jake, Trudy, and their two young children, Tim and Patricia, left their custom-built home behind for a series of rented houses in the West Ferris area of North Bay. For Tim, who was just starting grade 1, and his younger sister, life was a new adventure at Tweedsmuir Public School, set against the backdrop of the rocky, windswept landscape of northern Ontario. Life in the north was a new adventure, but the family bonds remained strong. Pat fondly remembered visits from Uncle Tom, Aunt Marg, and her cousins, both to their home and for fishing trips on the vast expanse of Lake Nipissing. It was here, too, that she formed her lasting memories of her grandfather. I was only 8 or 9 when he died, she recalled, but she vividly remembered a bustling family reunion at his West Avenue home in Kitchener. Most of all, she remembered his generosity. He always sent me $5 on my birthday, she said. It seemed tremendously extravagant at that time. This connection to her heritage was a source of pride, especially around Remembrance Day, when she would bring a shillelagh egg to school that her father claimed Pat had brought from Ireland, a story whose authenticity, she admits, might be a charming piece of family lore. Her father also told her she was a princess, descended from the kings of Ireland, a perfect story for a young girl. For a time, Jake's gamble paid off spectacularly. The white truck dealership flourished. The massive, powerful trucks were the lifeblood of the Elliot Lake mines, and Jake, with his natural salesmanship, was at the heart of the action. It was a period of heady prosperity and boundless optimism, but the family's fortune was built on a single precarious commodity. In the late 1950s, the United States, the primary buyer of Canadian uranium, announced it would not be renewing its contracts. The market collapsed almost overnight. The boom town of Elliot Lake went bust, and with it, the white truck dealership. The business went into bankruptcy, a devastating blow that wiped out everything Jake had built, and his business partner from Sault Ste. Marie ran off back home with whatever money was left. In the face of what could have been a crushing defeat, the true partnership between Jake and Trudy shone through while Jake began the difficult search for a new sales job. Trudy, the ever-capable Westervelt graduate, took direct action to keep the family afloat. From the front hall of their rented house at 575 Lakeshore Drive, on the parking lot of the Golden Dragon restaurant, she opened and ran an official Postal Substation. It was a remarkable act of entrepreneurship born of pure necessity, a testament to her refusal to let the family fail. Day after day, she served the community, her sharp mind and quick hands, ensuring the family had an income while her husband rebuilt his career. Even in this period of uncertainty, Jake's optimistic, risk-taking spirit was impossible to suppress. It found its next expression in a venture born of pure North Bay charm, the Pickerel Queen, in a deal likely hatched over a beer with a partner in the beverage room of the nearby Lakeview Inn. Jake invested in a 50-foot vintage wooden charter fishing boat. It was a romantic, if ill-fated, dream of taking tourists out onto the vast, sparkling waters of Lake Nipissing. The project never truly set sail, and the boat spent most of its time moored and derelict. But for young Tim, the failed business was a magical gift. The Pickerel Queen resting at Champlain Park became a private playground, a silent wooden giant that proved that even a father's failed dream could become a son's cherished adventure. The collapse of the white truck dealership was a blow that would have permanently grounded a less determined man, but Jake Carroll was at his core a survivor. While the Pickerel Queen sat as a silent wooden monument to a dream that never quite sailed, Jake did what he had always done. He adapted and found a new mission, while Trudy anchored the family's immediate finances with the ingenious Postal Substation in their front hall of their rented house. Jake hit the road, leaning on the one asset that could not be bankrupted, his reputation as a first-class salesman. He took a position with a GM diesel dealer, a business connected to the legendary Harper Power Products, the main Ontario distributor for the powerful engines that were the workhorses of the North. This new role sent him plunging back into the rugged, familiar territory he knew so well from his dealership days. His son Tim would often ride along, a silent co-pilot on these long sales expeditions. The car would chew up the miles of lonely highway, pushing ever deeper into the vast Canadian Shield for Tim. It was a unique education. He would spend countless hours waiting in the car, reading a book, or watching the rhythms of small, hard-working towns like Timmins, Kapuskasing, and Sault Ste. Marie. From the passenger seat, he had a front-row view of his father's craft. He saw the easy charisma Jake employed as he walked into a sprawling pulp and paper mill, the air thick with the scent of sawdust and industry. He saw the confidence with which his father would stride into a remote mining office to pitch a massive standby generator, a machine that could mean the difference between profit and disaster for a company. These were not simple sales. They were complex negotiations built on trust, technical knowledge, and the sheer force of Jake's personality. It was a masterclass in resilience and a powerful unspoken lesson for his son on the nature of hard work. This relentless effort paid off, and by 1959, Jake's success on the road allowed him to secure a new, more stable, and more lucrative position in Toronto. The family prepared for another monumental shift, leaving the familiar, rugged landscape of North Bay for the sprawling, fast-paced world of the big city. The transition was stark. Their first nights were spent in a hotel near the Cloverdale Mall before they settled into an apartment at 87 42nd Street in the lakeside community of Long Branch, a borough of the gigantic city of Toronto, which at the time had a population of just over 1 million. For Tim, who had been accelerated a grade, the move was a plunge into the unfamiliar world of a seventh grader in a massive urban school. The era itself was charged with a palpable tension. Their apartment was located just across Etobicoke Creek from the Lakeview Rifle Range, a military installation. In the tense atmosphere of the early 1960s, this proximity had a chilling effect. The family would often be jolted awake in the dead of night by the terrifying, mournful wail of air raid sirens being tested, a weekly, visceral reminder of the Cuban Missile Crisis that hung over a generation. Despite the anxieties of the age, Jake thrived. His career continued on its upward trajectory, first with the diesel company and then with John Best, selling specialized industrial vibrators. His success soon allowed the family to leave the apartment behind and achieve the dream of homeownership in the city, purchasing a house at 364 Lake Promenade. The home sat directly across the street from the vast, windswept expanse of Lake Ontario, its endless horizon a fitting view for a man who had once been a pilot. This was a symbol of their hard-won stability. Pat's own memories add a layer of playful chaos to this period. It was here that her father earned his affectionate nickname, Dudley. Cousin Lynn had a pet name, Butters, for her dad Tom, which inspired Pat to find one for her own father. One evening, while playing a board game based on the cartoon character Dudley Do Right, the family was simultaneously trying to light a batch of Dud firecrackers. The combination of the game and the Duds cemented the name. She also recalled him working for Diversey Chemicals and bringing home materials for Tim to mix in the garage. Yet, after nearly a decade in Toronto, a different kind of ambition began to take hold. The hustle of the big city and the demands of a high-pressure sales career had provided a good life, but it came at the cost of being disconnected from their roots. A pull towards home, towards a life with more room for family and friendship, began to grow stronger. The decision was made not for a job, but for a life. In 1968, they decided to move back to London, the city where their story had begun, a place where they could be closer to old friends, and most importantly, closer to Jake's brother Tom. The move was a financial success. They sold the house on Lake Promenade for $30,000, turning a handsome profit of around $12,000. This allowed them to purchase a home at 607 Commissioners Road East in London with a comfortably low mortgage. Jake, ever the resourceful salesman, continued to work, taking jobs with a few smaller companies while he searched for the right long-term fit, but the priority had shifted. Shortly after their return, this new focus on home and family was beautifully cemented. When Trudy's father Ernest passed away in 1970, the 150-acre Harrison family farm near Zenda was sold. Her share, a substantial sum of $26,000, was not put away for a rainy day. Instead, in a decision that spoke volumes about their priorities, Trudy invested half of it in the backyard. She had a magnificent, sparkling 16 by 32-foot swimming pool installed after years of moving, of uncertainty, and of relentless hard work. The pool at Commissioners Road became the heart of the family's social life, a cool blue symbol of permanence and prosperity. It seemed as though the final piece of Jake's professional journey fell into place when he landed the coveted branch manager position at the London Sales and Service Office of Toledo Scales. It was the perfect job, in the perfect city, at the perfect time. The journeyman had finally come home. The stability, however, proved to be an illusion. After a period of success, a corporate restructuring decision came down from head office. The sales and service branch was to be dramatically downsized, becoming strictly a service depot. The sales division was eliminated, and with it, the branch manager position. After all the risks, the moves, and the relentless hard work, Jake Carroll was once again out of a job. As Jake faced this new and unexpected unemployment, a parallel drama was unfolding in his son's life. Tim had been working for his Uncle Tom at Armitage Carroll, learning the ropes of the family's entrepreneurial spirit. Tom, recognizing Tim's potential, offered him a major opportunity: a promotion to open and run a brand new depot for the company in Winnipeg. But Tim, recently married and with his own roots now firmly planted in London, refused to move. The decision, though right for his young family, meant he too was now out of a job, and so it was in a moment of pure, unplanned synchronicity that both father and son found themselves unemployed. This was the moment of shared uncertainty that would change everything. Instead of despairing, they saw an opportunity. They pooled their knowledge and their nerve and started a small venture buying and selling used equipment from the junk rooms of local hospitals. Soon they stumbled upon a treasure, a trove of used hospital beds. At that very moment, the Ontario government had passed a new nursing act, creating a scramble as nursing homes rushed to upgrade their facilities to comply with new standards and qualify for government funding. The demand for proper hospital-style beds was immense and immediate. A market had appeared out of nowhere. Father and son looked at each other, and in that moment a new business was born. The partnership between Jake and Tim Carroll was forged in a moment of shared uncertainty, but it was fueled by a powerful combination of luck, experience, and youthful ambition. While Jake had been working with his friend Reg Kennedy and had proven the market for used beds, Tim's junk business was a masterclass in hustle and high-profit arbitrage, buying things like obsolete operating room lights and baby incubators from hospitals at scrap prices and reselling them to his old veterinarian clientele throughout Ontario. The decision to merge their efforts into repossessions and surplus goods was the moment the venture truly began. From the second floor of the old W.E. Saunders Pharmaceutical Building on Richmond Street, accessible only by a creaky freight elevator, the father-son team began to build their empire. The legend of those early days was solidified by stories that would be retold for years. The most famous was the great Autoclave heist. Tim, knowing the Labatt's Brewery Research Lab needed a large steam autoclave, spotted the exact machine at an auction. Bidding only against scrap dealers who saw a hunk of metal, he won it for pocket change. The victory was immediately followed by a logistical nightmare, a white-knuckle snail's pace journey across town with the dangerously top-heavy machine sinking the bed of a rented truck. The payoff, however, was a staggering $8,000 check. The best moment came when Tim returned to their makeshift showroom to find Jake, as he often did, lying on one of their display beds, peacefully reading a novel, tearing out each page as he finished so as not to lose his place. When Tim told him of the coup, Jake's quiet calm erupted into pure elation. It was a shared triumph, a moment of validation that proved their partnership was capable of extraordinary things. This success spurred the company's most important evolution. As the market matured, their customers grew pickier. They no longer wanted just functional, jailhouse-style steel beds. They wanted attractive wood grains and matching bedside cabinets. The partners realized they couldn't just sell what they could find. They had to make what the market wanted. This was the crucial pivot. Tim bought a used table saw, and in their new, larger rented space on McCormick Boulevard, they transitioned from being resellers to being manufacturers. The junk business was over. For Jake, a man whose own father was a master cabinet maker, this shift must have felt like a return to his roots. He was no longer just selling. He was part of an enterprise that was building something tangible and of high quality. As the 1980s dawned, the company, now officially named Carroll Healthcare, had outgrown its rented spaces. It was time to build a home of its own. The decision to construct a purpose-built 10,000-square-foot factory was a massive leap of faith, and Tim took on the role of general contractor himself, a testament to the hands-on, can-do spirit of the company. For Jake, watching the walls of the new plant go up at 110 Towerline Place was the ultimate validation after the heartbreak of the white truck dealership years before. He was once again the co-founder of a thriving enterprise, a physical building that stood as a proud, permanent symbol of their success. The irony of its location, right next door to his brother Tom's company, the very place Tim had left to start this journey, was a source of immense satisfaction. In these years, the business became a true family affair. Jake's wife, Trudy, did the books with Tim's wife, Wendy, leaving her teaching career to join the company, bringing her sharp administrative skills to the growing operation. For Jake, this was the final, perfect piece of the puzzle. He would come to the factory, a proud patriarch, seeing his son, his daughter-in-law, and a growing team of employees all working together. The company was more than just a success. It was a family, and it was the triumphant, culminating act of his long and resilient professional life. The factory on Towerline Place was more than just a building. It was a symbol of a promise fulfilled. For John Jake Carroll, it represented the culmination of a life lived with relentless optimism and an unshakable belief in second chances. He had faced the horrors of war, the heartbreak of bankruptcy, and the uncertainty of starting over, and he had met each challenge with a jovial spirit and a refusal to be beaten. In the thriving family business, he saw the ultimate reward for a lifetime of resilience. In 1988, surrounded by the family he had built and proud of the company he had helped create, Jake Carroll passed away at the young age of 65 on July 3, just before his August 18th birthday. His passing left a profound void, but his legacy was cast in far more than just the steel and wood of the factory. It was a legacy of character. He was the pilot who had been shot down and lived to tell the tale, the salesman who could charm his way into any boardroom, and the father who, in the face of financial ruin, saw an opportunity to teach his children about tenacity by simply refusing to give up. He was a man of wonderful contradictions. He was a war hero who rarely spoke of his own heroism, but quietly lamented the friends who never came home. He was a man of deep family loyalty, whose greatest joy in his later years was the thriving partnership with his son. And he was one of the family's black sheep, a man who, along with his brother Tom, carried a bit of the war's different worldview with him. Their shared camaraderie, often found over a few beers at the Legion in Lambeth, was a bond forged in a world their stricter, teetotaling family members could tolerate but never fully understand it. Was a testament to a life lived on his own terms, with a love for people and a belief in living life to the fullest the supportive home. Jake and Trudy Built on Commissioners Road was more than just a place of patient tolerance for teenage projects. It was a launch pad. Their daughter Pat's own journey is perhaps the greatest testament to their parenting. After completing 3 degrees, her life took an adventurous turn. While walking through a hall at Western University, she saw a poster, wanted, female vocalist, see the bars of Northern Ontario, a square deal and a Christian atmosphere. On a whim, she applied. The rest is history, she said. The moment that truly defined her parents' trust came when she asked her mother what she thought of her going on the road with 4 boys in a white panel van. Trudy's reply was simple and profound. I think it will be good for you, and she was right. Pat married the band's lead guitarist, Bob, and they moved to London, England for a year. While he earned a law degree, she worked next to Westminster Abbey. In a delightful twist, she once put the official seal on a gas engineer's card bearing the name of a Dudley and sent it to her father. He loved it, she recalled. Jake and Trudy visited that Christmas for a grand European adventure. Their life together saw Bob become a renowned entertainment lawyer for many Canadian bands, including Rush, while Pat had a distinguished career in education before becoming an instructor at the State University of New York. Bob and Pat have 2 wonderful sons, Alexander and Brandon. If we tie this to Grandpa Carroll, Pat reflected, it is because he valued family and taught his children to value their children and family. I feel very blessed to have grown up with such wonderful relatives and friends. It is the perfect summation of the Carroll legacy, a foundation of love and support built by a boy from Dublin that gave future generations the confidence to see the world and find their own unique song. Before we go, welcome back to the Cousins Corner. A huge thank you to my sister Pat for her wonderful note this week, and I hope all of you are having a fantastic, relaxing summer. Because of the summer lull, we didn't have any major historical corrections this week, but Cousin Deb sent me an email that sparked the ultimate family mystery. While listening to the audio, Deb suddenly wondered about the souvenir Grandpa Pat brought home from the trenches. Back in Chapter 3, we talked about the mangled German bullet that the surgeons pulled out of Pat's shattered jaw, the one he kept rolling around in a drawer in the house on West Avenue for years. Deb asked the million-dollar question, where did that bullet go? So I'm officially issuing an all-points bulletin to the entire Carroll clan. I'm putting up a virtual wanted poster for Grandpa Pat's World War I bullet. Did it get passed down to one of the siblings? Is it sitting in a jewelry box or a sock drawer in someone's house right now? Did one of the cousins inherit it? If you know where the bullet is, or if you even have a rumor about who had it last, please hit reply and email me. I would absolutely love to solve this mystery and include the answer in the final printed book at the end of the year. Thank you all for listening. This chapter about my mom and dad obviously holds a very special place in my heart, and I'm so glad I get to share their story with you. I'll see you in 2 weeks for Chapter 7, where we dive into the life of Uncle Tom, the Piper of Commissioner's Road.